They mocked her name before they ever knew her story. They laughed at her shoes, at her quiet nature, at the way she sat alone during lunch with an old notebook filled with sketches instead of gossip and popularity lists. And back then, no one cared to understand her silence or her dreams because in their eyes, she was just the invisible girl, the background filler, the girl with no expensive clothes, no fancy car, no rich family, just a nobody. Her name was Aria Lane. And while everyone else walked the hallways of Ridgewood High like royalty preparing for some imaginary throne, she walked with her head down, counting seconds until school ended, until she could return home where the noise of her classmates' cruelty couldn't follow her. Teachers barely knew her, classmates forgot her birthday, and when senior year came with the traditional yearbook signing, Aria received only 3 signatures, 2 from teachers and 1 from the janitor, who had once found her crying quietly in the hallway after someone taped a note to her locker that said, "This school would be better without you." No one knew that every insult carved itself deep in her heart, but instead of destroying her, it built fuel. Fuel she didn't know she would one day use. Graduation day came with cheers, confetti, and proud parents, but when they announced future plans, everyone looked forward to hearing who was becoming a doctor, who was becoming a lawyer, who was going to take over the world. And when her name was finally called, there was silence. No university listed, no career path beside it, just her name. That day, someone whispered loudly enough for half the gym to hear, "She'll probably work at a gas station and disappear." Another laughed and added, "Or marry someone broke like her. She's going nowhere." Aria didn't cry, not where they could see, but that night she stood in the mirror and made a promise. One day, they will remember my name. Not because I asked them to, but because they will have no choice. Life didn't magically become easier after high school. She worked part-time jobs, struggled with bills, and lived in a small apartment with peeling paint and 1 working light bulb. But inside her lived something fierce, something no bully had managed to kill. One day, while scrolling through online career programs, she saw a recruitment video for the U.S. Army Aviation Program. Helicopters, purpose, discipline, power, and something inside her lit up. She applied, even though she doubted they'd accept someone like her. But she trained harder than she had ever trained for anything in her life, running every morning before sunrise, practicing resilience, studying mechanics and aviation theory, pushing past exhaustion until pain felt like progress. The first day of training was brutal. Most recruits came stronger, louder, more confident. Others mocked her again, just like school, calling her soft, weak, too small to fly anything powerful. But this time Aria didn't shrink. She remembered every humiliation from high school like it was fuel. She stayed quiet, observed, studied harder, failed sometimes, but learned twice as fast. And slowly, the same people who doubted her began asking her how she always knew the right answers, how she fixed errors the instructors couldn't even detect. Years passed, and Aria became something no one from Ridgewood High could have predicted. One of the youngest women in her class to qualify for advanced helicopter training, specializing in the AH-64 Apache, a machine feared and respected because it wasn't just a helicopter. It was a flying war beast built for precision, strategy, and dominance. She wasn't the loudest, wasn't the show-off, but she was the one everyone trusted when missions got hard. Now, while she became everything they believed she never could, her old classmates lived their lives, and 10 years after graduation, the school announced a reunion. The same people who once mocked her were now excited to compare careers, houses, success, and they thought Aria Lane was still the same forgettable nobody. Some joked in a group message, "Imagine if she shows up. She probably still has that same notebook, probably still crying somewhere." Another replied, "If she comes, someone record it. I need a laugh." But fate had a different sense of humor. When the reunion night came, excitement filled the decorated gym. Laughter, old memories, drinks, and music took over. People bragged, new cars, promotions, marriages, but one empty line on the sign-in board remained untouched. Aria Lane, not arrived. And just when they were sure she wouldn't show, just when someone raised a glass and said, "Some people never change," the ground outside began vibrating, not softly, but with deep thunder that shook windows and rattled cups. People rushed to the doors. The sound was unmistakable to anyone who had ever heard military aviation, the chopping roar of rotor blades cutting the night air. Phones came out. Someone laughed nervously. No way. That better not be for this reunion. The skies suddenly filled with wind and light as a massive Apache helicopter descended, shining like a predator against the darkness. The winds blew so strong that banners tore off the walls, dresses flew backward, and cups rolled across the floor. Everyone stood frozen, some terrified, some speechless, all confused. And when the helicopter gently lowered onto the football field, its engines roared one last time before powering down. Through the settling dust, from the open side door, stepped a woman in a crisp aviation uniform, shoulders straight, boots polished, wings gleaming under the stadium lights. She removed her helmet slowly, letting her hair fall, and silence spread across the field as realization hit. Aria Lane. The same girl they once called nothing. The same girl they ignored. The same girl they underestimated. Only now, she wasn't just seen. She was undeniable. One of the former popular girls whispered, almost shaken, that can't be her. But it was, and Aria walked with calm confidence, not arrogance, not revenge, just fulfillment of a promise she once whispered to herself in the dark. The reunion doors opened for her, like she belonged there more than any of them ever had. Conversation stopped, eyes widened, hearts raced, and finally, the same boy who once taped the cruel note to her locker found the courage to speak, voice cracking as he asked, "Aria, is that yours?" She looked him in the eye, not with hatred, but with strength, and replied softly, "Yes." I pilot the Apache now. Some stared in disbelief, some hid their jealousy, and some felt guilt for the first time in years. But Aria wasn't there to embarrass anyone. She wasn't there to brag. She was there to prove something to herself, that the girl who once felt invisible had become someone unstoppable. Before the night ended, the gym echoed with respect. People lined up just to talk to her, to take pictures, to apologize. But the biggest moment came when someone asked her how she survived the loneliness, the cruelty, the doubt. She smiled, not sad, not angry, just grateful for the journey. "Because I learned something," she said. "People can doubt you, mock you, ignore you, but they cannot stop you, unless you let them." And the room fell silent, not out of shock this time, but out of admiration. She left the reunion not to prove she was better, but to prove she never needed validation to become who she was meant to be. When the helicopter lifted back into the sky, lights reflecting off its armored frame, everyone on the ground watched, not just with awe, but with a question burning inside their hearts. How many people had they underestimated in their lives? And somewhere above the clouds, flying toward the horizon, Aria smiled. Not because they finally saw her, but because she finally saw herself. And that those who had doubted her would never again underestimate the depth of experience and skill a single veteran could bring to a new environment. And it was then, as the sun set over the compound, casting long shadows across the range, that she spoke softly to herself, a statement of resolve and gratitude intertwined. This is her Brave Stories. Subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. A line that acknowledged both her own journey and the audience that would come to know it. And she smiled faintly, knowing that the road ahead would have challenges, that every day would demand excellence. But she was ready, not because she needed to prove anything to anyone else, but because she had survived, she had endured, and she had earned the right to stand, fully visible, fully capable, and fully respected. And as night fell, the camp quieted, yet her presence continued to resonate. The echoes of her skill, discipline, and hidden past leaving an indelible mark on everyone who had witnessed it. A lesson in humility, perseverance, and the silent power of experience. And though the recruits would continue to train and new challenges would arise, they carried with them the example of the veteran who had walked among them. Her sniper tattoo, no longer a secret, but a symbol of mastery, courage, and unspoken stories that commanded respect and inspired excellence. And in the weeks that followed, she continued to demonstrate, to guide, to mentor, and to challenge, all while quietly reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point, understanding that recognition was not the goal, but the natural result of living with integrity, skill, and unwavering commitment. And as she moved from one task to the next, one simulation to another, the balance of her past experiences and present actions created an atmosphere where learning was not forced, where respect was earned silently through deeds, and where the quiet veteran, once mocked and doubted, had transformed the very culture of the training ground, leaving an enduring legacy that would ripple through the recruits, the instructors, and the entire command structure, a legacy built not on ego, but on precision, discipline, and the profound understanding that true expertise speaks for itself, commanding attention not through words, but through the unmistakable force of lived experience. And as she finally rested at the end of a long day, reviewing performance logs and tactical reports, she allowed herself a fleeting moment to appreciate the irony that the very tattoo which had once been invisible, misunderstood, or even mocked, now stood as the unmistakable mark of someone who had seen the world in extremes, survived its harshest trials, and emerged not just unbroken, but stronger, wiser, and undeniably formidable. And this understanding, this equilibrium of past and present, action and reflection, would carry her forward into every future engagement, challenge, and opportunity, reminding her and everyone around her that the silent power of experience is a force that no doubt, no mockery, and no ignorance can ever diminish. And as the night deepened and stars blinked into existence above the compound, she allowed herself one final thought, a quiet affirmation that would guide every choice and action henceforth. The past is my teacher, the present is my proving ground, and the future, no matter how uncertain, will bear witness to what I have learned, what I have endured, and what I am capable of achieving. And with that, she prepared for the days ahead, each movement precise, each decision deliberate, each action informed by a lifetime of experience, quietly embodying the ethos of a veteran who had hidden in plain sight, who had endured, who had been doubted, and who had finally earned the respect and recognition that comes not from seeking it, but from living it every single day. And as the weeks turned into months, the veteran became not just a fixture of the training ground, but its silent pillar, her expertise shaping drills, her experience guiding decisions, her presence inspiring confidence in those who had once doubted her. And though she rarely spoke of her missions, the precision of her instruction, the meticulousness of her demonstrations, and the calm authority in the face of chaos communicated everything without words. And the recruits began to understand that excellence was not flashy, it was not loud. It was a quiet mastery honed over years of challenges, failures, and near misses that had tested both body and mind. And they watched as she handled every scenario, from live-fire exercises to simulated hostage extractions, with a focus that was almost surgical, dissecting each problem, anticipating variables, adjusting tactics, all while remaining aware of the human elements at play, the stress, the fear, the hesitation, and her guidance gradually transformed the culture of the unit, turning uncertainty into confidence, mistakes into lessons, and hesitation into decisive action. And the general, observing from the sidelines, noted not only the technical prowess, but the subtle leadership she exhibited, a rare ability to command respect without needing to assert rank, a skill often overlooked but infinitely more valuable than titles or medals. And he began to rely on her for advice on the most complex tactical decisions, her insights, carrying weight because they were proven in the crucible of real combat, not textbooks. And as new recruits arrived, they too learned quickly that underestimating her would be a costly mistake, and even those who had once mocked her now followed her lead, imitating her focus, her posture, her methodical approach, and gradually the laughter and sneers that had greeted her arrival became memories, lessons in ignorance and assumption. And she moved among the recruits with quiet authority, correcting mistakes with a calm word, demonstrating techniques with fluid precision, and allowing the young soldiers to see that true mastery was built from repetition, patience, and an unshakable understanding of the stakes, and though the challenges grew more complex. Night exercises, obstacle courses, high-stress tactical simulations. She met each with a composed determination that never wavered, guiding others to find clarity in chaos. And as time passed, her presence extended beyond the training grounds into strategic planning, the general consulting her on hypothetical scenarios, seeking her judgment on operational risks, and she approached each opportunity with the same meticulous care she had applied on the battlefield, weighing probabilities, considering contingencies, and recognizing the human element in every calculation. And when the final assessment of the class came, it was not merely her technical skill that shone, but the transformation she had inspired in everyone around her, the once divided and skeptical recruits now functioning as a cohesive unit, trained, disciplined, and confident, their growth a living testament to the power of leadership rooted in experience. And during the concluding ceremony, the general publicly acknowledged her contributions, not with grandiose fanfare, but with a measured, heartfelt statement that captured the essence of her impact. Your skill, your dedication, and your guidance have set a standard that will influence this unit for years to come. You have earned every measure of respect. And as the applause washed over her, she felt no pride in the conventional sense, only the quiet satisfaction of a life of service recognized, the validation not of her ego, but of her purpose. And she glanced over the crowd, noting the way recruits held themselves taller, the instructors observing with newfound appreciation, and even her peers offering nods of silent acknowledgement. And in that instant, the memory of the initial ridicule, the laughter, the doubt, the whispers that had followed, her like shadows, seemed distant, almost irrelevant, for she had proven, through action, through skill, through unwavering commitment, that true worth is measured not by perception, but by the depth of experience and the courage to remain steadfast in the face of doubt. And as she finally allowed herself a breath of relief, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the hidden missions, the sacrifices, the nights of solitude, and the moments when failure had seemed inevitable. And she realized that the tattoo on her arm, once a secret emblem of past achievements, had become more than ink. It was a symbol of perseverance, a reminder of the trials endured and the strength required to overcome them. And as she looked around at the faces of those she had guided, she understood that her legacy was not in medals or formal recognition, but in the people she had inspired, the lessons silently absorbed, and the standard she had set through example. And in that quiet recognition, she found a sense of closure and fulfillment, knowing that she had carried the weight of her past without arrogance, had transformed skepticism into respect, and had left a mark on this new chapter of service that would endure far beyond her time. And with a final glance at the setting sun casting a warm glow across the training ground, she allowed herself a rare smile, a mixture of relief, contentment, and anticipation for whatever challenges lay ahead, understanding that while the past had defined her skill, the present had shaped her character, and the future would bear witness to her continued resilience, quiet authority, and unwavering commitment to excellence. And in that moment, she whispered softly to herself, almost as a mantra, almost as a vow, fully aware of the journey yet to continue. This is her brave stories. Subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And with that acknowledgement, she stepped forward into the next chapter of her life, fully visible, fully capable, and fully respected. The veteran who had once been mocked now standing as an exemplar of skill, patience, and courage, leaving behind a legacy that would shape every recruit, instructor, and mission she encountered from that day onward. A living testament to the enduring power of experience, discipline, and the quiet, unshakable strength of a soldier who had survived the trials of the past and used them to illuminate the path for all who would follow.